Some finals entertain you. Some finals break your heart. And then there's the 2006 Champions League final. A night where history collided with chaos.
2 times he came on, that was the key of the game. So sometimes, I think all the time you talk about Ronaldinho, Eto'o and people like that. Talk about the proper people sometimes make the difference. And that was Henrik Larsson tonight on 2 assists. Because I didn't see no Ronaldinho and I didn't see no Eto'o.
A red card in under 20 minutes? A backup goalkeeper thrown into the fire? A London club chasing immortality on Europe's biggest stage? And a Barcelona team stacked with legends, walking in like kings? This wasn't just a final. It was a clash of belief, brilliance, and brutal twists. This is why the 2006 Champions League final will never be forgotten. Arsenal's run to the 2006 Champions League final was more than a club milestone. It was a landmark for English football. For the first time, a London club had reached the final of Europe's biggest competition. But it didn't come easy. After years of falling short against the likes of Valencia, Chelsea, and Bayern Munich, Arsene Wenger's side finally broke through. In 2006, they found the discipline, belief, and consistency they'd lacked for so long, rewriting their story and making history. While Arsenal were entering uncharted territory, Barcelona were returning to familiar ground. The 2006 Champions League final marked their 5th appearance in the final of Europe's elite competition. Their previous appearances spanned decades. The first came in 1961 when they lost 3-2 to Benfica. In 1986, they fell short again, this time in a penalty shootout against Steaua Bucharest. But they finally lifted the trophy in 1992 under Johan Cruyff, defeating Sampdoria at Wembley. Their last final before 2006 was in 1994, where they suffered a heavy 4-0 defeat to AC Milan. By 2006, Barcelona was hungry for redemption and determined to reclaim European dominance. In the 2005-06 season, they arrived at the final in peak form. Just 2 weeks before facing Arsenal, Barcelona clinched the La Liga title for the 2nd consecutive year under manager Frank Rijkaard. Their domestic campaign had been dominant, finishing with 82 points and just 4 losses. They were not only champions of Spain, they were one of the most feared teams in Europe. At that point in time, Barcelona was widely regarded as the biggest club in world football. Their brand of football was attacking, fluid, and expansive, and much of that revolved around 2 key figures, Ronaldinho and Samuel Eto'o. Barcelona were expected to win. On paper, they had the experience, the form, and the star power. But as football often reminds us, finals are not won on paper. But before you continue this video, please click the subscribe button. Thank you. While the world's attention was fixed on Barcelona's glamour, flair, and star-studded lineup, what many overlooked was the quiet dominance of Arsenal, because this wasn't just any run to the final, it was a defensive masterclass. Arsenal didn't sneak into the final through luck or narrow margins. They earned it by putting together one of the most astonishing Champions League campaigns of the modern era. They conceded just 2 goals throughout the entire tournament. That's not just impressive, that's almost unimaginable at this level of European football. No other team came close to matching that defensive record during the 2005-06 campaign. And for a club that had never reached the final before, Arsenal's journey was more than historic, it was terrifying. Their run began in the group stage, where they were drawn against Ajax, Sparta Prague, and Swiss side FC Thun. On paper, it was a group they were expected to top, and they did just that. But what stood out was the manner in which they did it. Arsenal remained unbeaten across all 6 games, finishing with 5 wins and a draw, while only conceding 2 goals in the entire group phase. But it was the knockout stages that Arsenal truly began to silence doubters across Europe. In the round of 16, they were drawn against Real Madrid. Not just any version of Madrid, this was a team filled with legends. Zinedine Zidane, Ronaldo Nazario, David Beckham, Robinho, Raul. It was a daunting challenge, and many assumed Arsenal's European journey would end there. But that night at the Santiago Bernabeu, everything changed. Thierry Henry produced one of the greatest individual goals in Champions League history, gliding through the Madrid defense and firing home to give Arsenal a 1-0 win away from home. It was a result that sent shockwaves through Europe. In the return leg at Highbury, Arsenal were calm, calculated and defensively flawless. They shut Madrid out completely, earning a 0-0 draw that saw them advance 1-0 on aggregate. It was the first time an English team had ever won at the Bernabeu, but more importantly, Arsenal didn't concede over 2 legs against one of the most potent attacking forces in Europe. In the quarterfinals, it didn't get any easier. Standing in their way was Juventus, the champions of Italy and arguably the most disciplined team in the competition. They had Gianluigi Buffon in goal, Lilian Thuram and Fabio Cannavaro in defence, Patrick Vieira, Arsenal's former captain in midfield, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic up front. But Arsenal dismantled them. At Highbury, Cesc Fabregas, who was only 18 at the time, dominated the midfield battle and scored the opening goal before setting up Henry for the second. Arsenal won 2-0, and in the second leg in Turin, once again their defence held strong. A professional, mature performance earned them a 0-0 draw and a place in the semi-finals. Juventus, with all their experience and pedigree, couldn't break through. The semi-final against Villarreal was a different kind of test. It wasn't about containing stars, it was about managing pressure and absorbing wave after wave of attacks. The first leg at Highbury was settled by a scrappy goal from Colo Touré. But in the second leg in Spain, Arsenal were on the ropes. Villarreal dominated possession and created chances, and in the final minute, they were awarded a penalty. One kick could have sent the tie to extra time, but Jens Lehmann, the man who had been the cornerstone of Arsenal's defence all season, produced the most important save of his career, denying Juan Roman Riquelme from the spot and preserving Arsenal's 1-0 aggregate lead. It was a dramatic end, but again, Arsenal advanced without conceding a single goal over 2 legs. By the time they reached the final, Arsenal had gone 10 consecutive Champions League matches without conceding a single goal, setting a new record in the competition. That run wasn't built on luck or desperate defending. It was tactical discipline, intelligent positioning, and complete commitment from every player on the pitch. And what made this even more remarkable was that Arsenal were without their first-choice defence for most of this run. Sol Campbell had been injured for large parts of the season. Ashley Cole had also missed months due to injury and only returned in the closing stages. Lauren, the first-choice right-back, was out. In their place came a makeshift defence that rose to the occasion. Emmanuel Aboué, a young, energetic right-back who had barely played a full season. Philippe Senderos, still raw but physically imposing. Matteo Flamini, a midfielder asked to play left-back and doing so with remarkable adaptability. And Colo Touré, who became the leader at the heart of the backline. Behind them stood a Jens Lehmann, who had the season of his life. His decision-making, shot-stopping, and command of the area gave Arsenal a foundation they could trust. He was the only goalkeeper who had not conceded in the knockout stage. At the heart of everything was Thierry Henry. Captain, leader, match winner. Throughout the campaign, he wasn't just scoring goals, he was deciding matches. His goal at the Bernabeu was a moment of genius, but it wasn't isolated. He led by example, dropping deep to carry the ball forward, creating space for others, and finishing chances under immense pressure. Every big moment seemed to revolve around him, and his presence alone gave Arsenal the belief that they could match any opponent in Europe. Behind him, the midfield was anchored by Cesc Fabregas, just 18 years old, but already playing with the vision and maturity of a seasoned professional. His performance against Juventus, where he outplayed Patrick Vieira, his former teammate and mentor, announced him as one of the brightest young midfielders in Europe. Alongside him, Gilberto Silva provided balance and calm. He rarely made the headlines, but his positioning and ball recovery were vital in shielding the backline, especially with Arsenal playing a more cautious, compact style in Europe. On the flanks, Alexander Hleb and Robert Perez brought creativity and control. Hleb, a tactician with the ball at his feet, was crucial in breaking opposition lines and retaining possession in tight areas. Perez, though in the latter stages of his Arsenal career, still offered intelligence in his movement and knew when to drift inside or stretch the play wide. Then there was Freddie Ljungberg, who provided tireless runs and late bursts into the box, giving the attack another dimension and often pulling defenders out of shape. Across the board, Arsenal was defensively unmatched, and yet they were rarely mentioned as the favourites. The world was captivated by Ronaldinho's smile, Eto'o's pace, and the romantic idea of Barcelona finally winning again. But in truth, Arsenal had already written their own story, one of defiance, structure and resilience. They didn't have history on their side, they didn't have the star power, but what they had was a defensive record that no team had ever achieved before. And it was the kind of record that should have made everyone stop and reconsider who had the upper hand heading into Paris. While Arsenal were grinding out results with discipline and precision, Barcelona's path to the final was a display of controlled dominance. From the first group stage match, it was clear that this team wasn't just aiming for a deep run, they expected to reach the final. They began in Group C alongside Udinese, Werder Bremen and Panathinaikos. It wasn't the toughest group on paper, but Barcelona didn't just qualify, they imposed their style and dictated every game. They finished top, scoring freely and conceding sparingly. Ronaldinho was already dazzling with his elegance and unpredictability, while Samuel Eto'o offered relentless movement and clinical finishing. The group stage wasn't just about results, it was a statement that Barcelona was building momentum. In the round of 16, they were handed a monumental tie, Chelsea. The same Chelsea that had knocked them out the year before in a dramatic, chaotic encounter. This time, Barcelona were determined to correct that. The first leg at Stamford Bridge was intense, physical and tactically tight, but it was Barcelona who came away with the advantage, winning 2-1 after an own goal and a late strike from Eto'o. At the Camp Nou, they managed the second leg with intelligence and maturity, drawing 1-1 and advancing 3-2 on aggregate. That result carried weight, not just because of the opponent, but because of the control they exerted across two legs against one of Europe's most organised sides. In the quarter-finals, they faced Benfica. The first leg in Lisbon ended goalless, but Barcelona were rarely in danger. At the Camp Nou, they clicked into gear. Ronaldinho scored and Eto'o added a second to send them through with a professional 2-0 aggregate win. It wasn't spectacular, but it was efficient. And by this stage, Barcelona's focus had sharpened. Every performance felt deliberate, every movement rehearsed. The semi-final was the real test. Against AC Milan, a team filled with experience, tactical discipline, and some of the biggest names in world football: Maldini, Pirlo, Shevchenko, Kaká. The first leg of the San Siro was a tight affair, cagey and tactical, but it was Ludovic Guili who broke through the lines and finished off a brilliant move started by Ronaldinho. That 1-0 win was massive, and in the second leg, Barcelona showed why they were so dangerous. Milan pushed, pressed and probed, but couldn't break them down. Barcelona were compact when they needed to be and explosive in transition. They held on to that 1-0 aggregate win and with it reached their first Champions League final in over a decade. But more than the results, it was the players who made this Barcelona side feel inevitable. Ronaldinho was at the peak of his powers. He'd won the Ballon d'Or. He was the most feared attacker in the world, not just because of his technique, but because he could change a game in one moment from anywhere on the pitch. Eto'o had scored 6 goals in the competition already. He thrived on big occasions, and his chemistry with Ronaldinho created space and panic in every backline they faced. Deco brought control and intelligence. He was the link between the flamboyant frontline and the disciplined midfield. In Juli, they had a winger who could stretch defenses and exploit spaces. And in Edmilson and Van Bommel, they had players willing to do the dirty work, cover ground, and allow the attacking players freedom. Then there was a youth, bright, emerging talent that gave this side not only balance but also depth. Andreas Iniesta, still only 21, was already showing his composure and technical precision when called upon. A young Lionel Messi had begun to break into the squad before injury ruled him out of the final stages, but his presence around the team hinted at what was to come. Defensively, they were well structured. Carles Puyol led with aggression and leadership, while Rafael Marquez offered calmness and positional awareness. Behind them, Victor Valdez remained unshaken, pulling off crucial saves whenever tested. Barcelona had the perfect balance: creativity and control, flair and discipline, youth and experience. They were not just winning matches, they were dictating them. And after defeating Chelsea and Milan, the English champions and the Italian giants, the general consensus was clear: Barcelona weren't just finalists, they were favourites, heavy ones. As they arrived in Paris, their confidence was unshaken. The media, pundits, and even neutral fans were leaning their way. This was supposed to be the final step in the journey of a team that many believed had already proven themselves to be the best in Europe. But standing in their way was a side that had conceded just 2 goals in the entire competition. A side that had been underestimated every step of the way. And everything came down to one night in Paris. From the first whistle at the Stade de France, the stakes were unmistakable. This was a Champions League final between 2 teams that had taken completely different paths to get here. Barcelona, the fluid, expressive favourites, and Arsenal, the defensively resilient underdogs. But all expectations, predictions, and tactical discussions were quickly swept aside as the match delivered immediate intensity. Barcelona kicked off, but it was Arsenal who imposed themselves in the opening exchanges. Within 2 minutes, Thierry Henry, Arsenal's captain and talisman, had already tested Victor Valdez. A sharp low drive forced the Barcelona keeper into a quick save. Seconds later, from the resulting corner, Henry found space and produced another shot on target. Valdez stood firm, but the message was sent. Arsenal were not here to defend for 90 minutes. They had come to challenge Barcelona on their terms. Barcelona responded in the 7th minute. Samuel Eto'o made a darting run down the right and slipped the ball to Ludovic Giuly, whose angled shot from a tight space demanded a save from Jens Lehmann. The game had barely settled and already both goalkeepers were being called into action. 4 minutes later, Barcelona won a free kick 35 yards from goal. Ronaldinho, never shy to attempt the spectacular, stepped up but drove it well wide of the target. It felt like both teams were still figuring each other out, but that process was suddenly and dramatically interrupted. In the 18th minute, a single moment changed the trajectory of the final. Ronaldinho played a through ball to Eto'o, who timed his run behind the defense. Jens Lehmann rushed off his line, hesitated, then lunged. He brought down Eto'o just outside the box. Ludovic Giuly immediately finished the loose ball into the net, but the referee had already blown the whistle. The goal was ruled out, and instead, Lehmann was shown a straight red card, the first ever sent off in a European Cup final. Arsenal, now reduced to 10 men, had to sacrifice Robert Perez to bring on backup goalkeeper Manuel Almunia. It was a devastating moment, not only because it left Arsenal with a numerical disadvantage so early, but also because it forced a major reshuffle in their tactical setup. With 10 players and a new goalkeeper, Arsenal dropped deeper, absorbing pressure while looking to strike on the counter. And remarkably, they struck first. In the 37th minute, Arsenal earned a free kick after Emmanuel Eboué made a bursting run down the right flank. There was debate about whether Eboué had exaggerated the contact, but the foul was given. Thierry Henry curled in the delivery, and Sol Campbell, rising above Carles Puyol, powered a header into the back of the net. Arsenal led 1-0, 10 men, 1 goal ahead against Barcelona. From that point until halftime, the pattern of the game shifted. And Barcelona, now chasing, began to increase the tempo. Ronaldinho found more space between the lines, and Eto'o nearly equalised just before the break. His close-range shot, deflected by Almunia, struck the post. Arsenal, under siege, held on and went into half-time with the advantage. At the break, Barcelona made their first adjustment. Ed Milson, who had picked up a knock in the first half, was replaced by Andres Iniesta. The young midfielder brought tactical control and vision, helping Barcelona recirculate possession more effectively as they tried to break down Arsenal's low block. 6 minutes into the second half, Iniesta tested Almunia with a low shot, which the standing goalkeeper did well to hold. But Arsenal were not content to simply defend. They ventured forward through Alexander Hleb, who latched onto a pass from Henry but dragged his shot wide. Then came a spell where Arsenal looked like they could double their lead. Henry forced another save from Valdez, while Ljungberg saw his attempt blocked. The most significant change came when Hleb again played in Henry, one-on-one with the goalkeeper, but the French striker failed to convert, firing straight at Valdez. Barcelona responded by making a bold change. Frank Rijkaard substituted Mark van Bommel for Henrik Larsson in the 61st minute. It was a crucial decision, one that changed the game. Larsson, though past his peak, brought intelligence, experience, and timing into the final third. Just minutes after coming on, his presence made the difference. In the 76th minute, Andres Iniesta picked up the ball in the left channel and threaded a precise pass through Arsenal's defensive shape. Larsson, receiving with his back to goal, played a perfect one-touch layoff into the path of Eto'o. The striker's run was timed to perfection and he finished with composure, squeezing the ball past Almunia at the near post. Barcelona were level. Arsenal's resistance had finally been broken. 4 minutes later, Larsson was involved again. This time it was a combination on the right. He played a give-and-go with Giuliano Belletti, who had just come on for Uliga, and the Brazilian fullback surged into the box. His shot, driven low and hard, passed through Almunia's legs and into the net. Barcelona had turned it around. 2 goals in 4 minutes, from behind to ahead. The 10 men of Arsenal had been undone. In the final minutes, Arsene Wenger tried to rescue the match. He brought Jose Antonio Reyes for Chleb, seeking fresh legs and pace, but Arsenal couldn't find the equaliser. Barcelona came close to a third through Juli, but Almunia denied him. A brief flare-up saw Larsson cautioned for impeding the goalkeeper, but it changed little. The final whistle confirmed it. Barcelona 2, Arsenal 1. The Catalan club were champions of Europe for the second time in their history. For Arsenal, it was heartbreak. The best ever run in the competition had ended in disappointment. A team that had conceded only 2 goals throughout the tournament had conceded twice in 4 minutes when it mattered most. It was a final defined by bold decisions, a red card, relentless pressure, and 2 moments of incisive brilliance. And it confirmed what many had suspected, that Barcelona were not just one of the best in Europe that season, they were building something that would soon dominate the continent. But this season, we might see a rematch of this kind of final. Arsenal is back among Europe's elite, with a squad that's matured, battle-tested, and hungry for their first Champions League title. On the other side, Barcelona is quietly rebuilding into a force again, blending youth with experience and guided by a new wave of talent that echoes the greatness of their past. Could the 2025 final bring these two back under the brightest lights? Could history repeat itself? Or will this time the ending be completely different? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to check out our last video on the 2010 Champions League final.